This show is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for all your support in the production of this Career in STEM series.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Careers in STEM series. We are Team FRC Team 226 Hammerheads from Troy, Michigan, consisting of over 100 high school students from Troy and Athens High School. And we've been competing in the first robotics competition since 1999.
This is a bi-weekly show occurring on the first and third Thursdays of every month. For the series, we'll have a 30-minute interview period and then a short Q&A at the end for audience questions.
My name is Shaun Dantas, and I'm a junior at Athens High School.
My name is Sonnet, and I am a sophomore at Troy High School.
Our guest today is Amy Yang. Amy graduated from Troy High in 2010 and majored in electrical engineering at the University of Michigan. She has an impressive resume through college, including several internships, and she's currently working as an avionics engineer at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. So, Amy, hi. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Like you said, I graduated from Troy High School in 2010. I went to University of Michigan for my bachelor's in science and electrical engineering. I graduated in 2015 and started my job at NASA Johnson Space Center. I've been there for about 6 years now. During my college time, I also co-opted at NASA Johnson Space Center. So I have that experience, and that's how I got my full-time job there as well. And now I'm kind of pursuing my master's degree at Johns Hopkins, also in electrical engineering.
Yeah, that's really cool. So we're going to start with your high school experiences first. So even before high school, what was your first experience with robotics? Did you start before high school, during high school?
It definitely started during high school. It was actually freshman year when we did the freshman orientation. And, I don't know if you guys still do this, but all the clubs would come into the auditorium and kind of talk about their, promote their club. And, all the clubs were really cool and all, but the robotics team came in, driving their robot into the auditorium and started throwing T-shirts at us. So that's when I was like, wow, that's really cool. I want to be on that team. So it came naturally, and I joined the team and was on the Hammerheads for 4 years.
So, obviously, it's been a while since you've been on the team. So how does it feel to see 226 grow since when you were the team president in 2010 and seeing where it is now? How does that, how do you feel about that?
I am just so impressed by how much the team has grown and has matured. And I still follow the team emails, so I get to kind of see all the little things that's going on and seeing people going to competitions. Even though I'm not as involved in robotics as I had been in the past, it's still really cool to see where the team is at today.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. So on 226, you're obviously really involved, and you did spend your senior year as president. But besides just your senior year, could you tell us a little bit more about your time on Team 226? And what was your most memorable moment on the team?
Sure. Let's see, trip down the memory lane. I did my freshman year and on the animation team. So I was on the animation team. It was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot of new skills. But I also realized that I was not artistic or talented, so had to go look for something else. So my sophomore year, I was on the build team. Also had a great time. I love, one of the reasons I went into engineering is because I love building things with my hands. So having that hands-on experience my sophomore year was just an incredible experience, and learned a lot of skills too. My junior year, I became the vice president of the team. So I think I helped a lot with coordinations, fundraiser events, volunteering events. The great thing about being a vice president is, you don't really have to make any hard decisions or have any real responsibilities. So you can have fun and kind of observe on the side and help where you can. And that led me to being the president my senior year. And that was a really stressful role. My job was essentially promoting the team, manage deadlines, chairman submissions. Yeah, it was a little stressful, but we did pretty good.
So how did robotics and other extracurriculars that you did, how did they help you choose a college or a major? How did they influence that?
Good question. I knew after having that robotics experience that I wanted to major in engineering, but I really didn't know in what. So I went in kind of with an open mind. At first, I was thinking mechanical or aerospace because I like building things, so that makes sense. And space has just always been something that's really cool to me. I never thought that it's really possible to work in the space industry for some reason at the time, but that was always in the back of my head. And through some college, probably lectures or courses involving NASA, I realized there are opportunities in the space industry for young engineers. So I took my first college course in engineering in an area that kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like to be an engineer working in space. So that was really cool. And then I joined a lab that builds nanosatellites. And through that lab, I realized that the most useful and most interesting skill was actually the electrical engineers. We had probably about 2 aerospace engineers in the lab and like 10 electrical engineers and a couple mechanical. So that's when I realized, wow, like we really need electrical engineers, and it was interesting to me. So that's kind of how I chose my path. It wasn't decided at once or in the beginning. Things kind of just came up and kind of spoke to me, and I took that opportunity to go down that path and see if I liked it, and if I didn't, I kind of chose something else.
That sounds really interesting. So at University of Michigan, obviously you were involved in a lot, and you got your undergraduate degree there. So besides that, what other organizations were you involved in at the University of Michigan?
So my focus when I was an undergrad at the University of Michigan was really that nanosat lab that I mentioned. It was called Michigan Exploration Laboratory, MXL. I joined, I think, probably my sophomore year, and it was very demanding, just like robotic was. I'm sure you guys know how time demanding it could be to be involved in a club. So I spent a lot of time in that lab. If I wasn't really in school or doing homeworks, I was working in the lab trying to build hardware. We would go fly our payloads on on a weather balloon. So those are our fun field trips where I'll take our payloads out and fly it on a weather balloon and see what kind of data we get. So that was kind of most of my activities. If I had a choice, I think I would have liked to join some organization that may have been a little more relaxing and more fun in a different way. This was fun, but also a lot of work. I also did something at University of Michigan called Europe, and it was called, I think it was undergraduate research program. That you get to interface with a professor that maybe have a specific area of research that you may be interested in, and I would highly recommend that too, because you get to see if research is something you are interested in, because a lot of people do end up getting higher degrees, especially now, getting your master's or PhD and doing research. Sometimes that could be really cool too.
So while you were in the University of Michigan, I know you touched on this a little bit, but how did you go around obtaining your NASA internship, or how did you pick up any other internships while at U of M? How did you go about doing that?
So sophomore year, I did a lot sophomore year. I went to a career fair, and it's something that, you know, people always tell you to go, just to get some experience, talk to some recruiters, see what they look for, make some network connections. And I went in with, you know, that mindset that I wasn't really there looking for a job. I was there just to figure out what's out there. And I had a few companies, you know, usually you get a list of companies that are coming to the career fair. And I did my research on a few that I was interested in, mostly companies that, you know, have to do with space, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed type of thing. And, you know, NASA was not on the list at the time. They must have been a late entry or something. So I was talking to all the recruiters and I saw NASA set up their booth there. So I went and talked to the recruiters. We chatted for a little bit and I gave them my resume, got an interview the next day and got a call back for the co-op. So that's how I got my co-op internship. I know a lot of universities have specific co-op programs that they match you up with. So there's lots of different ways to get internship or co-op experience.
With your NASA internship, what did you really do on a day-to-day, or what were your major focuses?
I co-opted in very different areas. I did 4 co-op tours, and they're all very different. My first co-op tour was in mission control. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with mission control, but we have a center that controls the ISS, you know, housing 6 astronauts on board most of the time. And they make sure that, you know, everything of the vehicle is safe and sustainable. And there's also other vehicles that Mission Control will manage. And so my area was pointing and more of the kind of navigation type of things. So I honestly don't know how I got mashed up with that, but it was a good learning experience, and I got to see, you know, what it takes to be a flight controller, the type of communication skills that you need to have, the type of decision-making skills and fast response and like think on your feet, that type of things as a flight controller. My second co-op tour is actually where I ended up working full-time, and it was in avionics. Specifically communications and tracking branch. So we deal with all things that, you know, communicates with the vehicle end to end. My concentration is in antenna design, and I'm working on my background. I'm working on my master's in that area as well. So my third co-op tour was and spacesuits, and that's the other projects I'm working on now. So with the spacesuit team, we get to see, you know, what kind of testing is needed, what kind of design is needed to make sure that an astronaut would survive going out into space in a spacesuit. And then my last co-op tour was in robotics. And I got to work on some PCB designs for a project called Force Shoe. And it was a way to measure how astronauts do exercise on the ISS, the International Space Station.
Did you ever work with any of the rovers that launched?
I did not, but my colleague actually flew to California a few weeks ago to help with the Mars 2020 launch. So there's definitely people doing that at JSC, but I was not involved. I'm on, so going into my work a little bit since I don't know if that question is coming up later. But right now, one of my jobs is working on the spacesuit and is designing the antennas for the spacesuit. And that's set to launch in about 3 to 4 years.
At work, you're obviously involved in a couple different projects. So, what does your regular working day look like, especially now with COVID and everything?
Yeah, a lot of remote, but I also was able to go on site a lot as well. Whenever it's required for me to go on site to work, I would do that. And, we follow COVID protocols and everything. And, just trying to keep everybody safe, but still get the job done. Thinking about my day to day, there's a lot of meetings and coordinations, of course. It depends on the project cycle. So we would go through periods of, heavy R&D where we do a lot of design work and, rapid testing type of things. And then we'll go through a period of testing and certification, environmental testing, making sure that your hardware can survive the temperatures of space and the radiations, that type of things. And then we would go into design phase again, and then we'll go to qualification, and then we'll certify for flight and build flight hardware.
So, as mentioned before, you worked at the Johnson Space Center, so they work with a lot of like manned rocket launches. Have you had any like involvement with any of the rocket launches, including like involving humans?
So are you referring to any specific launch?
Not like in recent times, maybe. Not any specific launch.
Okay. So the astronauts usually used to, in the last 10 years since shuttle retired, actually, flew out of Soyuz, which is is a Russian vehicle. That's how they launched to ISS. And I believe about 10 years ago was when the commercial crew program started. So JSC is involved and the commercial crew program that allowed the astronauts to launch off of American soil again. Back, I guess, 2 years ago now was Crew 1 when SpaceX launched. And then I believe Boeing's vehicle is going to be launched in a couple of years, taking the crew to International Space Station. I am not directly involved in those commercial crew projects, but there's people in my branch that does.
With your time at NASA, obviously you did mention that you sort of wanted to go into aerospace for a while. You always sort of knew you wanted to work in this field. So how does working at NASA compare with how you thought it would be? Or what are the major differences or surprises that you got when you really started your job here?
I thought it was going to be really intense all the time before coming to NASA. And after working at NASA, I think there are definitely times where you're really, really busy, and there are projects that, we always have just endless amount of work and things to do. But, there's something to be said for work-life balance. And I think NASA does really good job of that, promoting employees to, take vacations and make sure you take care of yourself and take care of your family. And so that's been a really good surprise for me to know that, your managers are supporting you, making sure that not only you're productive at your job, but also you're productive in your life.
So, what's sort of like the work culture or the social culture at NASA? Is it like any of the other like newer tech companies, or is it more of a like conventional like corporation? How would that work?
I would say it's definitely more conventional. And I think it varies, depends on the team you're on. And I think that's true even for the tech companies, the newer, younger tech companies as well. There are areas there where, um, there's teams where there's more conservative teams, and then there's teams that likes to be a little more fast paced. And it all depends on, your budget, your schedule, how much pressure you're getting to get your product done.
What's your favorite part of your job?
Man, there's a lot. um, I think, space is really exciting, right? Just knowing that your hardware is going to fly one day, like that is really the most exciting part. And I think another thing is that, I really like the people that I work with, and that makes it exciting. I think everyone is just giving their 110% to make sure that your product is the best it can be, because we all know, the stakes of spaceflight is high, and we want to make sure that our astronauts are safe, and we're protecting them the best we can, and therefore we're all very driven to make sure that we put out our best work. So I think being in that environment is really exciting.
So, talking about the environment and the driven work members of NASA, what was the transition like between a college like UMich, which I would argue as well has its like fair share of very driven individuals? What was the transition like between college and the workplace?
I realized how much I didn't know was my transition. Coming out of college, you feel like, okay, I've learned quite a bit of information. I could probably start, doing some really cool things. And you can. But I realized that, the learning doesn't stop. It had just begun. And you're going to learn so much. And the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know and how much more there is to learn. So I've kind of realized that in my transition, and part of the reasons that I went back to school was to have that institutional learning on top of my hands-on daily work.
Talking more about your transition from college in a more scholastic setting to the industry, do you have any suggestions for maybe any soon-to-be graduates to ease the transition, or any advice in general regarding how learning in school is maybe a little bit different than learning in the industry?
I think ask for help. It would be my one bit of advice. You can't do everything, and at work, you have to learn from the people that is around you, and they are a really great resource if you find the right person. And most of the time, people are very willing to pass on their knowledge and to help. So take advantage of that. at school, I felt like, everyone was trying to do the same things. They're mostly my students. Yes, you can reach out to your professors to get, some advice on, how things work. But at work is where you really, everyone had a different experience. Everyone has so much valuable information to share. I really take advantage of your mentors, your coworkers. Even if you're the same age, it doesn't really matter. They had a different set of experience. They have something to contribute. And slowly you'll realize that you have a lot to share too, and you can start mentoring other people.
So, talking about learning and school, how has your your master's program for electrical engineering, how did that differ from your time at the University of Michigan and Johns Hopkins? What's the what is the major differences or contrast between the two?
Good question. I felt like in undergrad, I was still really trying to figure out what I'm most interested in and what I want to do. So my courses were kind of random. There were, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But my graduate courses now are a lot more concentrated after especially working, 2 to 3 years and choosing to go back to school. I knew kind of exactly the areas that I need more knowledge in and more interested in. So my course selections are a lot more strategic compared to undergrad. I felt like in undergrad, I was just a lot of times just trying to meet requirements, hey, I need a course in this and I need a course in that. And maybe it is designed that way in undergrad, so you come out a little more well-rounded and you have a little bit of background to really find what you're interested in.
Since you're working but also learning and trying to pursue your master's degree at the same time, how are you managing your work-life balance right now? Where do you stand with that?
It's very busy. It's a lot of work. So I would work probably 8 to 9 hours during the day and spend 2 hours in the evening doing school work. I have 2 dogs, so they definitely keep me busy as well. But also a great way to take a break from work and school to take care of your dogs and play with them and enjoy hanging out with friends on the weekends. It's definitely something that I look forward to after a long day.
What was like your favorite moment at NASA? Maybe like your favorite launch or something else. What was like the big moment that all of you and your coworkers kind of like sat together and watched? Like, was there like a big thing?
Yeah, every big launch, we would get together and either watch from the conference room or during the pandemic we would put up Skype and we put the launch up and we'll all watch it together. So that's always fun to do that. It's more fun because we're watching it with a bunch of people. So we definitely do that. The most recent launch that is out of JSC was actually our AA2. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but it's our ascent and abort test. So that was really exciting. I didn't personally work on it because there's so many projects. I couldn't possibly work on all of them, but we have coworkers that worked on them, so it's really cool to be able to share their excitement and their accomplishments.
You've obviously had a lot of experiences from high school all the way to now, whether it be like robotics, being in the industry, pursuing an undergraduate, or right now pursuing your master's. So, are there any specific skills that you've learned during any of those periods that are translating to your career or daily life, or anything other specific that you think have been really beneficial?
Yeah. Uh, I think robotics had taught me a lot of things and And those include commitment, discipline, working in a team, being responsible for something. I think you can get all those things probably from a lot of different areas or activities that you participate in, but robotics happened to be where I learned those things, a lot of those things. And you said work as well, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Getting along with people and having an open mind is also something that I learned, having to work with people, and sometimes you have technical disagreements. Sometimes, your idea may not be the best, as hard to admit as that may be sometimes. And to compromise, so those are some of the things that I think are really important in addition to your technical competency when it comes to work.
So, do you have any sort of like college advice, or like something that would help students pick between engineering or a similar major? Because it's a really like hard decision. I know it wasn't like as much of a like difficult decision for you, since I feel like you just found your field in robotics. But is there something that you would give to high school students who are looking to be interested in such fields, and they just want, like, they need that one like deciding factor between the two, like different majors?
I would say try it. Find opportunities where you can go into those fields and see what type of work they do. I don't know if that's possible for you, but find someone that is already in the field and ask if you can shadow them for a day and see if you find something that you're like, wow, I want to work on that. Trying to think if there's anything else. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Just, seek opportunities if there aren't there. Talk to your mentors. I'm sure they have a lot of connections they can help you with, and figure out if any of those things, if there's any opportunities that you can be an engineer for a day or be whatever major that you choose to be, and help make, just seek opportunities to help you decide the major. And it's okay to switch majors too. If you're, a year or 2 years in and you're like, this is not for me, I don't like it. It's never too late to switch courses and figure out what you really want to do.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today. I learned a lot. Shaun learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience learned a lot. So do you have any final notes, any like robotics advice, career advice, school advice that you'd like to share with our viewers today?
I would say for college, just get out there and try new things. I know it's kind of cliche, and you probably have heard this advice a million times, but just, this is your time to figure out who you are and grow as a person. So take on every opportunity you find to try something new. If you don't like it, worst case is you don't like it. But you still take away something because you learn something about yourself that you don't like it, and that's okay. And I think as long as you have an open mind, it will all figure yourselves out, hopefully.
All right, thank you so much, Amy. We'll now be moving on to a couple questions from the audience.
So one of the audience members asked, as you design the antenna, do you build the actual antenna, both the prototype and the production version?
I do. I don't do it by myself, but I design it and I send it out for it to get fabricated. I do all the simulations that's associated with the design, and I do all the testing that's associated with the design. So yeah, there are opportunities to do a lot of hands-on work at NASA.
So, how do you think high school has changed since you were in high school back in 2010 and now? How do you feel about like the evolution of technology in the learning process in schools, and how do you think that's affected students?
I think the amount of learning, amount of resources that's out there for learning is incredible. You can probably find an answer to anything you want to know. And that was the kind of the case too for us. I mean, I was in high school 10 years ago, so we had internet. We can search for anything. But I don't know how distance learning has been now during the pandemic. But yeah, just the resources is just like at your fingertip. You can look it up. But one piece of advice I think that I learned over the last few years is it's so easy to find answer that sometimes you stop critical thinking, and that could be an issue. So just make sure you, while you're absorbing all these information and you're learning and you're reading, when you have a problem, don't make the first thing you do Google how to do this.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight. Someone else from the audience also asks, particularly for you, since you are pursuing a degree in electrical engineering in this area, and even working at NASA, which is very STEM focused, do you have any specific advice for girls who are considering a career in STEM, especially in a field that's really dominated by males, and how you handle that on a day-to-day basis?
Sure, great question. So I think that question gets asked a lot. Have you, being a girl in STEM, have you ever had, what kind of challenges you faced? I would say no one has ever, come to me and confronted me and said, "You're a girl, why are you an engineer?" So I've never heard that. If anything, it has been the opposite. People have been so encouraging, and people are saying things like, "Wow, like good for you." So if engineering is what you want to do it, because people will, 99.9% of people will be super supportive, and the 0.1%, you just have to tune them out if that ever happens. But I do recognize that bias exists. Um, and especially if you go to college and you go into a super technical field, you're going to look around and you're going to see fewer girls than boys. And the higher education you go to, the amount of girls gets less. And the same for work. As you look up the management chain, the higher the manager, there are very few women in these leadership positions. So it's definitely a bias that exists, and maybe we're just late to the game, and it's definitely improving over the last decade. So yeah, I think we need to encourage more women to go into STEM, and providing those opportunities. And I think I'm not a super outspoken person, so I don't do a whole lot of outreach type of things, but I feel like I promote women in STEM by just trying to be really good at my job and being visible to younger girls who wants to have a career in STEM.
All right. Thank you so much, Amy. It was really nice talking to you today, and you provided a lot of valuable insight for a lot of our students today. Thank you to our audience for watching today and tuning in. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn notifications on for our next show. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you next time.